Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Shri Radha Madhava Ashtasaki ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Please allow me a moment while I change this setup. Okay, let me share my screen. Is everyone able to see the opening slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so just for some context before we go to today's verse, this chapter 3, which is called Karma Yoga, begins with a question. Can anyone tell me what the question is? What's the question that Arjuna asks Krishna at the beginning of this chapter? So the question is, why should I fight if intelligence or jnana is better than fruitive work? Arjuna asks this question because he's hoping that he can not fight and go to the forest. So he's asking Krishna, why are you telling me to fight? Why are you telling me that action is better if intelligence, or why are you telling me that I should fight if intelligence is better? Because the path of jnana means that you cultivate your mind more than you do action. So Krishna replies by saying that no one can abstain from acting, even for a moment. He says, Nahi kashchit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karmakrit. So we can't even maintain our physical bodies without work. We can't remain without any action. We always have to be doing something. This is what Krishna says. So perfection means that we act, but we act without attachment for the fruits of our actions. So if we're attached to the fruits, we become further bound up in this material world. So that's not the way to go. But the way to go is that we must work without any attachment to the fruits. And we should offer our fruits to Krishna, just like Krishna says in the 9th chapter of this verse. Yajñarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Mukta Sangha means that we're not bound by any material modes or any reactions in this world. We're free from those reactions if we offer our results to Yajna. So after instructing Arjuna on the process of devotional service as Nishkama Karma Yoga, or working for Krishna with no attachment, Krishna gives us further information about what our attitude must be towards those who have not achieved that stage of Nishkama Karma Yoga, those people who still perform Vedic rituals for the sake of sense enjoyment and not in an unattached manner for the sake of Krishna's pleasure. So that brings us to today's verse, which is verse 26. So please repeat after me. Na buddhi bhedam janayet
Na buddhi vedam janayet
Jnanam
ajnanam karma sanginam
ajnanam karma
karma
sanginam
sanginam
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्.
विधानयुक्तः समाचरन्.
Would anyone like to recite?
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत् अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्.
विधानयुक्तसमाचरन्.
न बुद्धिभेदं जानायेत्
न
बुद्धिभेदं
बुद्धिभेदं
जनयेत्
जनयेत्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तसमाचरन्
विधानयुक्तसमाचरन्.
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
अज्ञानं कर्मसञ्जिनम्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्
विधानयुक्तसमाचरन्.
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जयेत् कर्म सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्
विद्वान्
बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
अज्ञानं
कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तसमाचरन्
विद्वान् युक्तसमाचरन्
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
न बुद्धिभेदं
जनयेत्
जनयेत्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विधानयुक्तसमाचरन्
विद्वान्
युक्तसमाचरन्.
युक्तसमाचरन्. Anyone else would like to recite?
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेत्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
अज्ञानं कर्मसङ्गिनाम्
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि
विद्वान् युक्तसमाचरन्
विद्वान्
Okay, thank you everyone. Now we'll go to the synonyms. Na,
No,
not.
not.
not
not
Buddhibhedam,
Buddhibhedam,
disruption
disruption
of intelligence.
of intelligence.
Janayet,
Janayet,
he should cause.
he should
he
cause
should cause.
Ajnanam,
Ajnanam
of the foolish.
of
Of the
the
foolish.
Karma sanginam,
Karmasanginam,
who are attached to fruitive work.
who are attached to fruitive work.
Joshayet,
Joshayet,
he should dovetail.
he should dovetail
Sarva,
sarva
all.
all
all
Karmani,
karmani
work.
work.
Vidvan,
Vidwan,
a learned person.
A
a
learned
learned
person.
person.
Yuktaha,
Yuktaha
engaged.
engaged.
engaged
Samacharan,
Samacharan
practicing.
Practicing.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Could everyone kindly go on mute? I'm hearing an echo of myself. Thank you. Translation. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Purport. Vedascha sarvar ahameva vedyaha. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performances of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. Would anyone else like to read this next section of the purport?
Can I read?
Sure, Radhika.
But your fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna consciousness person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave.
Anyone else would like to read the next one? Thank you, Radhika.
Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties.
Thank you, Radhika. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I would like to take the blessings of all the devotees, especially Pyari Prabhu and Jiva Mataji, so that I may be able to speak something useful today. So I'll read the translation one more time. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. When looked at from a general perspective, this verse most fundamentally teaches us that if one has surpassed the stage of acting for the sake of sense enjoyment, one cannot be satisfied with that and proud of his own success and look down upon other people who haven't reached that stage. So that's not a quality of a devotee. That's what this verse is teaching us. Instead, the devotee must help those who are below his or her level of advancement. He or she must have an attitude of compassion instead of hatred. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, one of the Nava Yogendras, who are sons of Rishabhadev, tell Maharaj Nimi, who is a king, when asked by him how to distinguish different kinds of devotees. In the Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami gives us 3 kinds of devotees that exist in the path of bhakti. The first one is the neophyte, who's Kanishta Adhikari. The second one is a Madhyama Adhikari, who's in like the middle stage. And then the last stage, or the highest stage, is the Uttama Adhikari, who's on the highest stage of advancement. Sorry, I hear an echo of myself. Thank you. So Maharaj Nimi asks the Navayogendras this question: how do we distinguish these 3 different kinds of devotees? So this is their reply about how to distinguish a Madhyamadhikari. Ishvare tadadhineshu balisheshu dvishatsu cha prema maitri kripopeksha yah karoti samadhyamaha. So the key phrase here is prema maitri kripopeksha. So towards the balisheshu, or towards the people who are ignorant, the Madhyamadhikari shows kripa, or mercy. So even though he's at a higher stage than they are, he doesn't look down upon them, but he shows them mercy and he tries to help them. In this process, he gives them his own association, but he doesn't take their association. So it's really important when we preach to others or when we're helping others, we should not, if they're on a lower level of advancement than us, we should make sure not to take their association, but we should give our association. And what it means to take their association is to engage in the 6 exchanges that Rupa Goswami describes in the Upadeshamrita, engaging in those with them, like accepting food from them or revealing our minds to them. We should not do that if they're at a lower level of advancement than us. So the Madhyamadhikari, he shows compassion towards the ignorant. So how are we to show this compassion remains the question. After we understand that we are to show compassion to these people, how does that compassion take shape? That's what this verse tells us. So first and foremost, the verse tells us that we should not encourage the fruitive worker to completely stop work. Work here means work that's born out of the 3 modes of material nature. Work that's motivated by a desire for the fruits of the action at hand. So we should not immediately motivate the fruitive worker to completely stop their work, because the result of that would not be beneficial for them. What would the result of a fruitive worker prematurely renouncing work be? Can anyone give thoughts or ideas? Guesses are okay too. What would be the result if a fruitive worker prematurely renounced his work and stopped working?
The family will be mad at him.
That's a possibility.
he or she will be very lazy and just fall into, being not doing any work at all and just goofing off.
He'll be frustrated also.
Yes, Mataji. So there will be some not very beneficial mental processes going on. Krishna answers this question a few verses before this. In verse 6, he says, Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyachara sa uchyate. So mithyachara means a cheater. The full translation of this verse is, one who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on the sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So even though externally this fruitive worker may not be doing his work to get his desired results, so he's not pursuing his desires, and he's showing himself to be a self-controlled person, but inwardly his attitude hasn't changed at all. He's still contemplating on the sense objects. And as we know in the second chapter, Krishna describes a whole sequence which starts with contemplating the sense objects. It starts with dhyayato vishayan pumsa, sangasteshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, kamat krodho vijayate, Krodad bhavati samoha, samohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhramshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati. So this buddhinashat pranashyati at the end means that again, one falls into the material pool. So even though one falsely renounces, as long as one is contemplating the sense objects, ultimately after going through this whole process of developing a desire and then developing anger, frustration, we ultimately fall into the material pool again. So this is not a productive exercise to prematurely renounce our work. So a devotee doesn't encourage this, but still there's a misconception among especially many people in India that if they join ISKCON, if they take initiation, they'll have to give up everything. People are afraid that if they join ISKCON, they'll have to give up their families, children, wives, and jobs and everything. They ask that, are you going to take sannyas if you join ISKCON, or if you get initiated? Doesn't mean you can't get married. But none of that is occurring, and Krishna is confirming that in this verse, that when we first start to bring people to the path of Krishna consciousness, we don't ask them to give up everything. Instead, we ask them to dovetail what they have. If they gave up everything, they would become cheaters, like Krishna said in 3.6. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear that this process of devotional service, it's a process that rejects all cheating religions. Dharma projita kaitavatra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. So this is for sincere people who are not cheaters. So given that, we wouldn't try to make more cheaters, especially when our process is a process that's not into cheating at all. So instead of this premature renunciation, what Krishna recommends in this verse is to help people offer the fruits of their actions to Krishna. So whether that means donating a portion of your salary to the temple, or donating to preaching activities, or donating produce if you're a farmer, or if you're a business owner, if you own like an Indian store, we should offer our fruits to Krishna, and this will purify us. Even though people may not offer 100% of their fruits, like a pure devotee may, even whatever portion that they offer, that will help them gradually become purified. They may still want sense enjoyment, and as this verse says, we should not disturb their understanding right away. All we should do is help them offer some of their results to Krishna. So this is how a Madhyamadhikari engages people who are less advanced. He shows them compassion, and he does so by making Krishna consciousness accessible. He doesn't demand something that's beyond their capability, beyond their level of advancement. So everyone has a place in this movement, and it doesn't mean that this is only for the extremely pure people. Everyone has a place, as long as their goal is to eventually achieve that stage of pure devotional service. Everyone has a place, and everyone has some sort of service to render. So we can see that the perfect example of helping people dovetail their actions in Krishna consciousness is Srila Prabhupada. He helped anyone and everyone serve in the way that was most useful for them, that was most beneficial for their advancement. And one of the many personalities whom Srila Prabhupada engaged in offering the fruits of their action to Krishna is George Harrison. So George Harrison was a very, very famous musician in a rock band called the Beatles during the 1960s and early 70s. And he had international popularity. He was a very, very famous person. We can say that he had that, one of the 6 opulences is fame. So he had this opulence that originally comes from Krishna. He was very famous. And so when the devotees went to England, the first 6 devotees that Srila Prabhupada sent to start preaching in England, they made multiple efforts to meet George Harrison and to introduce him to Krishna consciousness. And this exemplifies the compassion that the Madhyamadhikari has in reaching out to people and helping them get closer to Krishna in whichever way is beneficial for them, for their particular situation. So the devotees tried multiple times and it didn't work for the first few times. But one day, eventually, Shama Sundar Prabhu met George Harrison. And slowly, they began to cultivate him. They began to go to his home and do kirtan with him. And they began to introduce him to Srila Prabhupada's philosophy, to his teachings, to the chanting of the holy name. And eventually, George Harrison met Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, as I said earlier, he encouraged him, Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, they encouraged George Harrison to use the fruits of his actions in Krishna's service, be that his musical talent, his fame, or his money. They asked him to use that in Krishna's service. So consequently, inspired by Srila Prabhupada and the devotees, he did do that. He did follow their instructions. So I wanted to highlight 3 of his major contributions to the movement, even though he probably has done many more. I just wanted to focus on 3 today. So the first one is his song entitled My Sweet Lord. This was a very, very famous song, and many people were impacted by it once it came out. Several people say that they've heard that, and then that was like their first exposure to the Hare Krishna movement or to Krishna consciousness. And later they became a devotee. And I thought I would play some of this, but before that, I wanted to signal a few things that it may be helpful to pay attention to. The first is that he says Hare Krishna. At first, you see that there are like thousands of people at his concert. And then he says Hare Krishna into the mic at the beginning of the song. So just by hearing the Mahamantra, by hearing Krishna's names, all these people are being purified. And at the same time, he's also being purified because he's offering the fruits of his actions to Krishna's service. Here he's offering the fruits of his actions of learning all this music and becoming such a good musician. He's using those talents in Krishna's service. So he says Hare Krishna at the beginning, and then he sings his song, My Sweet Lord, and then towards the end, the chorus starts singing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So I'm going to play this, and hopefully everyone can hear it. Can anyone hear? Could you please?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so that was just a little snippet of the Maha Mantra in this song, and even the rest of it is quite Krishna conscious. It says that I really want to see you, oh Lord, I really want to be with you. So this was fundamentally influenced by Srila Prabhupada and George Harrison's association with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada didn't tell him, give up your whole music career and devote your life full time in the renounced order for Krishna consciousness, but he helped him use his talents, use the fruits of his work for Krishna's service, and thereby purified George Harrison, not only George Harrison, but also thousands of people who listened to it. This song has had a life of its own later. I've heard it played many times, even in stores so many years later. Just like 2 years ago, I was in Madison for a Sanskrit class, and then I was at office hours and they were playing this song there. So many thousands and thousands of people have heard this song, and it's all a result of George Harrison utilizing the fruits of his actions for Krishna service. And in addition to this song, My Sweet Lord, George Harrison also used the fruits of his action in giving his money that he accumulated to buy what's known as the Bhaktivedanta Manor now. It's a 17-acre property in England, and it was for the devotees to make a place of worship there, to make a temple. And it still stands there, his contribution. And so many people go to the temple and they can experience Krishna consciousness and they benefit from that. So this is another example of how he utilized his monetary fruits in Krishna's service. And finally, he also used his fame in Krishna's service. He sponsored the publishing of the Krishna book that Prabhupada wrote. We all know Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That book, it costed $19,000 at that time when it was published, and George Harrison sponsored that. And then he wrote the foreword to it. So at that time, whoever saw that, oh, George Harrison is reading this book and he's so famous, so we should also. So in that way, he also used the fruits of his work, which was his fame, in Krishna's service. And he was purified through that, and many other people were also purified. And in the purport, Prabhupada also says that a devotee needs to set an example to inspire others to offer their fruits. So we see that many devotees are setting that example and are inspiring others to offer their fruits to Krishna's service. One example is Ambarish Prabhu. He's a part of the Ford family, so he inherited a lot of wealth. And the businesses under his supervision also yielded a lot of wealth. So since several years, he has been donating thousands and millions of dollars to various projects in ISKCON, like the Deva Sadan Mandir in Detroit and the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. And the way that he's inspiring others to do this is that sometimes the TOVP has these matching campaigns or matching programs where if devotees around the world donate, say, $25,000 together, then Ambarish Prabhu would match that. So by offering the fruits of his work, he's inspiring other people to do the same. So this is how a devotee inspires other devotees, other people who are lesser advanced, to offer the fruits of their actions in Krishna's service. So I was wondering if anyone else has any examples of devotees who engaged in others in offering the fruits of their work to Krishna, or who offered the fruits of their own work to Krishna, or any other comments on this verse. Okay, if not,
our own temple in Glastonbury was donated by, or rather his life savings, Yadunandan Prabhu, one of the Niranjan Maharaj disciples, donated his entire estate when he passed away. He left it in his will to our temple, and that's why we have our current temple. So he gave up everything of his towards the temple.
Wow, thank you, Mataji, for sharing that. And of course, Pyari Prabhu and Jiva Mataji are always inspiring all of us to offer the fruits of our actions. Those of us who can't be full-time devotees like them, they're still engaging us in service and helping us become purified. Thank you, Sudevi Priya Mataji. Anyone else? Okay, if no one else wants to share anything right now, we can move on to the next verse.
Years ago, there was a devotee, trying to remember her name, but she was Miss Denmark. So in a sense, she used her beauty and her fame. But she became a devotee, and then they featured her on some magazines and things like that, how she changed.
Wow, that's wonderful, Mataji.
But yeah, I don't remember.
Was that the model for Krishna consciousness? They called her a model for Krishna. Was she the model?
Was it Puri
Yes,
Jana
she
Prabhu's wife?
had a D name like Dana Kelly or something like that. I don't know exactly what, but I remember she was featured in Back to Godhead magazine.
Yeah, something Satarupa, I think her name was. I can find it. It's just in the kitchen.
Yes, Mataji, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
There are so many examples of Gopi, they just don't come to mind, but there are so many.
There is
Of
another
course-
lady
of
called
course.
Jagatarini Mataji, and she was in Australia. She was a movie star, and she joined the temple. And her husband is the one that writes the commentaries. I forget his name now.
Puri
on
Jana Prabhu?
No, your father has a book of his. His name. He has written like a
Surrender.
commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. He
I
lives
think
in Brand-
that's Puri Jana Prabhu, Mataji.
Yeah, Burijan Prabhu's. Yes, when you say, I didn't get the name. Yeah, Burijan Prabhu's wife, Jagatarini Mataji, used to be a movie star from Australia, and she joined the movement.
Yes, Mataji, thank you so much for bringing up that example. And of course, okay.
You see?
I see Mataji.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can spotlight.
a model for Krishna consciousness. Her name was Satarupa, and she was Miss Denmark. But yeah, they interviewed her, and I don't remember. This was years ago. It's in this. Who are they? Yeah. Well, that's one.
Thank you, Mataji. That's a really good example. Gitamala Mataji, were you saying something?
No, I remember, I think she did some modeling and gave her, whatever, she gave to Krishna consciousness.
It would be nice to compile how people used all the 6 opulence.
Yeah, I think she was in Vogue magazine, a cover of Vogue, and that made it very famous. And then everybody was talking about Krishna consciousness, like she publicized Krishna consciousness, similar way to what George Harrison did.
Yes.
Because she was on the magazine of Vogue, and then people were talking about how the model had become vegetarian and all kinds of stuff. So she generated some interest in Krishna consciousness.
That's really nice. It's really inspiring. And I was going to say, when Gitamala Mataji was saying there are so many people, but they don't come to mind, of course, all of you are also setting an example for us on how to give up the fruits of action. So I think every single person here is an example. So I'm not sure if we can just go to the next verse now, unless anyone has any other comments. Does anyone have any other comments? Okay, we'll go to the next verse. Please repeat after me. Prakrite kriyamanani
Prakrite kriyamanani
Gunai karmani sarvashaha.
Karmani sarvashaha.
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Kartahamiti manyate.
Kartahamiti manyate.
Anyone would like to recite?
Yes. Krute kriyamanaani
Prakrite
Kriyamanani.
Gunai karmani sarvasaha
gunai karmani sarvashaha.
sarvashaha.
Ankara vimudhatma
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Vimudhatma.
Karta aham iti manyate.
Manyate.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Guni karmani sarvasha.
Gunai karmani sarvashaha.
Ahankara vimudatma.
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Kartaha miti manyate.
Kartahamiti
Manyate.
Kriyamanani.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Gunai karmani sarvasha.
Gunai karmani sarvashaha.
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Ahankara
Vimudhatma.
Kartaha manyate.
Kartahamiti manyate.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Prakrite kriyamanani.
Gunai karmani sarvasha.
Gunai karmani
karmani
sarvashaha.
Ahankaro vimuratma.
Ahankara vimudhatma.
Kartaraham iti mannate.
Kartahamiti
manyate.
Thank you, Mataji. We'll go to
Thank
the
you.
translation in the interest of time. Translation: The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are. Could everyone kindly mute themselves? Thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. Purport: Two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. The person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently, and that is the symptom of his nescience. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is the creation of material nature, under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. The ignorant man forgets that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Hrishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses in sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So in this verse, Krishna is addressing a common misconception that the living entities in this material world have. This is a very famous verse and it's cited by Srila Prabhupada multiple times. It's basically saying that we're controlled by the modes of material nature, and as a result of being influenced by them, we do certain actions. But we erroneously think that we, independent of any other force, are the doers of such actions. But the reality is that we're compelled by the modes of material nature to do those actions because we chose to be the servants of Maya. Our constitutional position is to be a servant. That's the dharma of the soul, is to be a servant. But we chose that we don't want to be the servants of Krishna and we want to come to the material world. And once we come here, we don't realize that we're serving Maya. We think that we're independent of any authority, as Prabhupada said in the purport, that we are doing all of this on our own, out of our own sweet will, and we're under control. But the reality is that we're actually controlled by the material nature, and that we're serving the material nature, we're serving our own senses. We're Godasas, we're not Goswamis in this material world. So ultimately, it's our decision to either choose to serve Krishna or choose to serve Maya. When Sanatana Goswami asked Mahaprabhu when he was receiving instructions from him, Kayami, who am I? Mahaprabhu said, Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. So our eternal constitutional position is to be Krishna's servant. So it's our choice if we want to get out of this material world and go back to where we belong and be Krishna's servants, then that's a possibility. We just have to endeavor towards it, and we have to try to come out of the clutches of Maya. So it's ultimately a choice that we have to make out of our own free will, and Krishna doesn't interfere with our free will, which is the reason why we're here. And we're under this misconception that we are the doers and we are controlling our actions, and we don't recognize that we're under the three modes. This example, we can make a parallel between Duryodhana and Arjuna in the Mahabharata situation. Duryodhana chose to serve Maya despite receiving good advice from so many devotees like Vidura, Bhishma, the Pandavas, Akrura. He received good advice from all these people. He even received good advice from Krishna himself, but he chose not to take that advice. He chose to remain the servant of his own senses, and he chose to remain the servant of Maya. He chose to have this ahankara that this verse is talking about. But Arjuna, after receiving good advice, after listening to Krishna's Gita, he chose to be Krishna's servant, to serve as Krishna's instrument. Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Nimitta matram bhava savyasachi. So he becomes Krishna's personal instrument and executing Krishna's mission for coming to this material world, ridding the earth of the unnecessary burden that the earth complained of at the very beginning of the Krishna book. So Arjuna helped Krishna in his mission. Arjuna chose to become Krishna's servant. So ultimately, he was in a better position than Duryodhana, who chose to become a servant of Maya, his own senses, and feed his ahankara even more. So this is all I have for today. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have something to say about your talking about George Harrison.
Yes, Mataji, please.
If anybody would like to know any more about George Harrison, they can ask our very own Radha Raman Das. He was inspired by George Harrison after he's reading his book, I, Me, Mine. I believe that inspired him to pursue Krishna consciousness. And then he was part of some group, I forget what it was called, but they were all inspired by George Harrison. It was kind of like a fan club or something. I'm not sure exactly. But George Harrison wasn't really into fans, so maybe they didn't call it a fan club. But he actually had the fortune of meeting George Harrison in Vrindavan, India.
Wow.
And he can tell his nice story that took place maybe sometime.
I know. I was actually thinking of Radha Raman when she was talking about George Harrison. I was hoping maybe he would be on the call.
Yeah.
How's he doing? I haven't seen him in a while.
He's downsizing. He moved to a smaller place, or he is moving to a smaller place. So he's busy with that in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
Living. But yeah, He's right in Vrindavan. He met him. It's very nice.
What a
Yeah,
nice place
he
to
became
meet.
a devotee because of George Harrison, right?
Yeah. It's kind of a funny story, and he tells it well. So I don't know
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah, we should hear it. I'm sure I've heard it, but I can't remember any of it now.
I want him to tell all the details because it's.
Yeah, we should hear it again sometime.
You'll have to ask him to.
You'll have to have him give a little class and tell the story.
Yeah, it's special.
And also, I was just thinking, Srila Prabhupada, he asked, George Harrison asked Srila Prabhupada, should I take initiation? And I think you're already Harry's son, he said. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
because his name is Harry's son. It sounds like Hari's son, right?
Right.
What an amazing name, right? To have.
Yeah. There's no accidents. Huh?
With no accidents, exactly. So Srila Prabhupada said, you're already Hari's son.
Thank you, Jiva Mataji and Geeta Mala Mataji. I think it's 8:01, so I would like to offer my respects to all the devotees. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo
Namo
namaha.
Namaha Ananta
Thank you
Koti
so much.
Vaishnava
Krishna.
Vrinda Ki Jai, Srila
Jai.
Prabhupada Ki Jai,
Jai.
Sugopi
Jai.
Mataji Ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.